the most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $400,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Live tonight for the virtual Five Flags Speedway, RaceSpotTV along with you to say good evening sim racing to fans and welcome to coverage of the 5th annual H&H Sign Supply Inc. Fall Brawl Spectacular, live tonight on RaceSpotTV and of course on iRacing Live. Happy that you're with us this evening alongside myself, Evan Pasoko, joined by Tim Terry, and downstairs our producer is Hugo Louise, and we come back to Five Flags once more, Tim, for the 5th installment of this Fall Classic, where it is basically a who's who of short track racing drivers on the iRacing service, and tonight caps off what has been 4 nights of action. Of course, the big one is we get sent to go racing for 250 laps.
Great to be here, Evan, and as you mentioned, it's been 4 straight nights. They've qualified the last 2 for this event. They had a can-in race on Monday night, and now the best 31 from qualifying. They ran time trials. They had a couple of qualifying races last night in a last chance qualifier, and now they will get ready to go racing here this evening for 250 laps. It's super late model racing. I can't wait to see how this one turns out.
Always fun to be with you once more here on RaceSpotTV. Of course, you mentioned the 5th installment of this Fall Brawl. You look back to some of the other names that have taken home wins in this, the likes of Edwards, Doucette, Tim Bills back in 2015 when it all began, Ryan Borges, Spearman, and all those names. We have not seen drivers come into this event and just win it multiple times, and I think that's because, as I mentioned, it is a very stacked field tonight through all of the racing that has led up to this evening. Let's talk about the format for tonight. 250 laps on the board. You start the car with 4 tires on it. You've got 4 extras. You can only change that set of tires once. You can take 4 at a time. You can go the lefts now, the rights later, or flip it around, Tim, but there are only 4 extra sets of tires down on the pit lane. That is kind of a staple marker to how the folks here at SARA, the Sim Auto Racing Association, like to put on these special events. And as we've seen in the past with this event, that could be a determining factor, and if it's the fastest car or the smartest car who ends up in victory lane.
And for a lot of short track racers and a lot of short track fans, when you go to a race like this or an open race, you would have a set amount of tires. So for those, it's an 8-tire race essentially. You have the tires that you start with and 4 tires sitting in the pits and can't take any more. And as you mentioned, there's a penalty for that. Later on, if we get to it, there's 2 attempts at a green-white checker finish. And we saw a little bit of that going into the qualifying last night. I know Briar LaPrade finished in second to Colton Davis in that LCQ. They'll start scratch. They had very fast race cars, didn't get the breaks they wanted to in their qualifying races, had to come through that last chance qualifier as the field begins to assemble here on the front straightaway. And you look at the 91 of Ty Majeski, there's a name that obviously synonymous here with iRacing, but hasn't won this race before. All-time winner when it comes to SARA competition, but hasn't won this one, finished second last year. He'll be one to watch as he looks to add his name to the 5th annual Fall Brawl.
and did have what I think was the top 6 time at a practice session, so certainly has a race car to work with. Everybody on the front straightaway just getting lined up so they could get their annual group picture while the race cars are still looking nice, clean, and sporty. Of course, we do go racing for these 250 laps. They're not all necessarily going to be that sharp looking come the end of the evening. And you talk about events like this, a one-off event, obviously it comes with the prestige of a special event like this that has been around for so long, but it is not just to say that you won the Fall Brawl Spectacular. Also some cash on the line this evening, over $500 up for grabs in the purse this evening. That is going to be split amongst, of course, finishing positions as well. A little bit of extra money on the line for the Ryan Blanchard Designs Pole Award. So numerous ways that you could walk out of this evening in the money. And of course, qualifying order, as you mentioned, that was determined last night with qualifying night number 2 with the prelude. It got everything set up for this evening. So the only thing that these drivers had was about a half hour of practice before we went live and on the air, and they are going to get set to lock in and go racing tonight as this one looks to see the sun go down and the lights come on as we race into the evening.
Yeah, there's some names here that are synonymous with SARA Racing, and when you look down the list, Joe Schaeffer Jr. finished 5th in this race back in 2016. The driver that I think I'm going to watch here this evening, though, Evan, is Dallas Pataska. He is a multiple-time pole winner. He won the K&N race back here on Monday night and finished 3rd in this race in 2018, and I believe he starts in 3rd. So keep an eye on that number 23 car as we roll through this evening. Going to be one to watch. Great starting position, has that track position up front, and has been in these big races before, and he knows how to get it done.
And of course, we could talk a little bit about the Five Flags Speedway, annual home to this Fall Brawl Spectacular. It's a paved half-mile course in Pensacola, Florida. You talk about the drivers in this being a who's who of the short track competitors on the sim. Even outside of the iRacing world, Five Flags is kind of at the top echelon of short track racing here in the United States and in North America. So no surprise that it is going to be the venue once more for this event. Provides very excited racing. These drivers have a lot of room to work with into the corners, but they are going to be finding and hugging that pit wall that you see them backed up to now. They're going to be awfully tight. That white line only, 2 feet off of the fence. They're going to be real tight on that down into turn number 1. And you mentioned talking about some of the other racing that we've seen over the course of this week before we jumped on air, that the drivers seem to be patient and kind of have cooler heads prevailing early on in this race. 250 laps is about a standard number, I'd say, for a major super late model race, feature race on the iRacing service, but you do have to survive to the end to have a shot at this one, so it doesn't really help you out if you go crazy right out of the gate. Again, these race cars can take a hit and keep on ticking, but that is within reason. So that's why when we were talking about the tire strategy, I mentioned that speed and smarts are getting them down to, I think, the 2 biggest determining factors in how what we see the action tonight shake out.
That's the one thing you mentioned as well. There's 31 cars in this racetrack. You have to survive to get to the end to finish this race. You've got some drivers that had subpar efforts in their heat races, and they're going to have to come from the back of this field. So keep a half eye on some of those drivers as they come through, guys like Colton Davis. We mentioned Briar LaPrade. You go on through the list. There's some guys that didn't get into the top 10 from time trials, so they had to go through a heat race. Some of them maybe didn't get the shake that they wanted to in their 100-lap qualifier last night. So you have to survive. You have to know who you're racing with, albeit this is a special event. So maybe some of these drivers don't race with each other on a weekly basis. We'll have to see what transpires here.
And again, just waiting for this photo down trackside to be complete as we can get underway. What do you think the drivers are thinking as they sit down here? They all get lined up, and you talk about the tradition of this event that's been going on since 2015. We mentioned, of course, that this event has yet to see a repeat winner in its history, and some of the biggest names that we're going to be looking at tonight are winless in it and want to add their name to that list. You know, you've just been practicing not only for about a half hour tonight, but outside of the official race session. This is an open setup race, so you'll see a lot of the teams in this one, and familiar ones to the likes of the Posse has a lot of big names. Ty Spearman, Ty Majeski arguably headlining that group, along with some of the other ones that are regulars in SARA competition. You've been hyped up for 4 nights in a row, ready to go, and you know you get to sit here and look side to side at the cars next to you and think about it just for an extra 5 to 10 minutes if you hadn't been kind of dwelling over the task at hand enough to begin with.
Yeah, you look down the list of some of these names that could very well walk away with this one. I look at Justin Trombley, going to start on the outside of row number 1, the driver from Maine, former eNASCAR iRacing Series competitor. Really good on the short tracks, races in real life in New England. Starting on the outside of row number 1, so keep an eye on that 34 car. I know Brad Mahar was trying to qualify into this one. Didn't get in last night through that last chance qualifier. A couple of really strong drivers didn't get in. I know JD Laird tried to make his way in as well. He's got a couple of cars in this one as well. Jimmy Mullis in the field. You look down the list, it's a who's who of drivers that could very well walk away with this one. A lot of short track pedigree. We mentioned Justin Trombley, the 51 of Ryan Matthews. He ran for a semi-pro championship when it came to the U.S. Legend Cars and NX ranks this year, and it looks like he's starting about mid-pack because, Evan, he's lined up right at the start-finish line right now, so he's got some work to do here this evening.
Yeah, he's got a couple of fast race cars both behind and in front of him, so that means that he'll have to figure this thing out as we get set to go racing. Just kind of looking back at what we saw in last year's race. As I mentioned, that was Ryan Doucette who took home the race win in that one after starting in 14th position. So you talk about a car that's about mid-pack, 31 cars on the grid this evening. Doucette will certainly let you know that it is possible to make it happen through some traffic. He would go on to lead 87 of the 250 laps in last year's contest to go on to take home the race win, and the $300 that came along with that. You also mentioned Ty Majeski came home second in that race last year. He was able to start from pole, so the cars who finished 1-2 had two very different trips to the end of the race, one starting up front and the other who ended up coming out on top having to be the one to work through the field to get up there and get in that spot.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting names and a lot of drivers starting near the back of this field as well. You look at that middle portion of this racetrack right now, Devin Morgan, the 112, is going to be strong, always strong in these super late models. One to watch here, former champion at SARA, going to start about mid-pack. You look down through the field, there's a who's who out here of drivers, and some of those drivers starting at the back of the field. Donald Clark, going to be strong. Daniel Pope II, haven't seen that name in a while, but great to see him out here. How about Mark Royer? When you talk about short track racing on iRacing, Mark Royer is one of those names that comes up, and he's starting near the back of the field. Had to take a provisional to get in to this event, so keep an eye on that 36 car as he makes his way to the front. Always one to watch when we go short track racing.
Yeah, you talk about the drivers who have to use that provisional to get into this race, and also mentioned, just a few moments ago, some of the big names that don't even make it into this. So you are going to see, and it remains to be seen, I guess, how many specifically, but we are going to see a couple of race cars that have that little bit extra that'll be contending for the race win. But I mean, the margin difference between the top and the very bottom, you just look back to the practice times before tonight. Alex McCollum got the best of them all, a 15.525. You look at the slowest registered time for Mark Royer, a 16.237. Now, you're still looking at a difference less than a second. And keep in mind, it is a little bit of a bigger margin when you look at 7/10 at a racetrack like this versus, larger NASCAR tracks. But when you're at a half-mile speedway like Five Flags and how aggressively these drivers attack the corners, that's not a ton. Now, that's going to compound itself over 250 laps. And again, yellow flags when they come, if they come, and how that plays into the strategy, I think still is going to be the biggest decider. You got to have a fast race car, but you have to execute this evening, I think, on top of all else.
You mentioned strategy as well. These drivers can't go the full length on fuel. They'll have to make one pit stop at some point in this race, about 150 to 170 laps on the fuel. So when do you decide to come down onto pit road? Do you come down a little bit early and try to get track position on the rest of them if you do get a caution flag, or do you stay out and try to run it as dry as you can before you come down onto pit road for what would maybe be a final 100 lap sprint to the end of the race? You mentioned cautions as well. Where do they fall? Do we get a couple of green-white checkers at the end? Where do you position yourself to get up front? We saw some excellent racing in the last chance qualifier last night, and restarts were very, very key. Trying to time them and trying to get to the inside line and try to get into a rhythm, especially for those guys that are up in front. We saw some green flag racing last night. I was really impressed when I was watching that through Briar LaPrade, and we saw a lot of green flag racing to that. So I think we're going to see some green flag runs. We're also going to see some drivers maybe lose their temper a little bit. It's short track racing. It's a big race, and there's some money on the line. So, and a lot of prestige with this race as well. So we'll see how this all plays out as these drivers, the final couple of drivers getting into line for their photo, and it looks like we're getting ready to go racing here shortly.
It all started back on Monday night with that K&N race that you mentioned, and over the course of these last few nights, an entry field that started at 56 strong has now been whittled down to 31 as we get set to go racing for the 5th annual H&H Science Supply Inc. Fall Brawl Spectacular right here live on RaceSpotTV and iRacing Live. So final seconds of practice ticking down, Tim, then we'll get to learn the official qualified order for certain, go down trackside and get set for 250 laps. Final moments before we get underway.
And these drivers have got the feel of this racetrack. They've been out here for the last 2 nights, and before that, even testing, trying to get those final couple of adjustments into their race cars, knowing who they are racing with and knowing where they start after last night's qualifying, after everybody got locked in, a couple of provisionals being handed out. So all the work is done, per se, to get into the show, and now it's about the 250 laps that are set to come up.
Just waiting on, and there you go. As we talk about it, the practice session has officially drawn to a close as these drivers take their final few seconds of track time before it gets serious. 5 years of history and over $500 are on the line this evening as we get set to go racing for the virtual Five Flags Speedway. Let's go trackside and take a look at your RaceSpotTV starting grid. Pole position belongs to the number 67 Sheeta. Call it all. It'll bring us to the green flag this evening, and joined on the outside of the front row by the 34 of Justin Trombley. Dallas Pataska rolling for the inside of row 2. It'll be third spot for the driver of the number 23 machine, with James Milbachler alongside the 61 car starting from 4th position. One more row back to the inside. It's the 92 car. That's Ty Spearman who rounds out your top 5.
And to the outside, Ty Majeski going to start in 6th in that number 91 car. Kyle Eli in the 07. To the outside, Fred Morrow in the 5 car starting in position number 8. Sean Cool to the inside in position number 9 in the 24. And Branden Wilkinson has a top 5 effort in this race in the past, looking to better it a little bit and get up to the front of the field. He'll start in 10th.
Continuing on with the familiar names to everybody here at RaceSpotTV. Jimmy Mullis will start 11th position at this one, and Alex McCollum alongside it rolls from P12. Devin Morgan in the 112 will start in 13th tonight. Cole Cabray outside in the number 12 car from 14th, and halfway home it's Ryan Matthews in 15th.
Jacob Harberts roll off in 16th. It's Dylan Bates in 17th. Ian Lane 18th. Joe Schaeffer Jr. in 19th. Keep an eye on that number 6 car. And Keith Medeiros in the 26th, starting in 20th.
Chris Canfield gets 21st, and Donald Clark 22nd. Daniel Pope II 23rd. Derek Robinson 24th, and it's Ryan Blanchard back, P25.
Will Dravicki, Colton Davis, your winner of the LCQ last night. Briar Leprod, Kyle Souza, Matthew Eddy, and Mark Royer, the scheduled starters. And Evan, I know we have a couple of end of the longest line penalties. There were some penalties assessed last night after qualifying for, I believe, excessive contact is what I was told. At least that's what I was told by Colton Davis, because he was one of the ones that got it.
Canfield, Harberts, Pope, Davis, and Blanchard. It looks like are going to be the 5 drivers who are given the end of the longest line penalty. It'll shuffle up the running order, of course, as we come to take the green flag. And to get this one underway, you can find that running order at the top of your screen. The lights are out on top of the iRacing.com pace car, and it is Call It Albans Field of Control as we say, let's go Fall Brawl Spectacular Racing at Five Flags. Green flag in the air for 2019.
That's the best start that Justin Trombley could have got on the outside line, falling into line. Top 2 are single file. Tasca on the inside, the 61 of Milbachler on the outside, trying to hold it, and here comes that 91. He got a good start. Ty Majeski takes a look to the inside. He'll battle for position number 4.
Bank a spot out of the gate, wants to try to get another one as he's on the inside of Milbachler here. Down the back straightaway into turn 3, give it to him. So Majeski +2 from the start of the race. Able to get around Spearman, and now able to get around Milbachler to move himself into 4th position. Single file, that spot on back. First battle back in the pack is the 07. Kyle Eli fighting with the 40 Carmel as it's a battle for P8.
A couple of JDR graphics cars going at it as Mullis will take that spot, and here comes Devin Morgan in the 112. Expect him to move and move early in this race. He'll go to the inside of Eli and look to pick up one more spot. Branden Wilkinson, same boat there. Very quick race car. He'll move to the inside of Eli and put him back one more position, and the freight train doesn't stop there. The 10 of Alex McCollum, the 51 of Ryan Matthews. Take a look to the inside as well as the 07's trying to stop the bleeding here.
And there's no sight for relief for the 07 machine. The 56 car is going to be able to get on the bias, so Wilkinson now clearing for that position. But as you mentioned, McCollum right now back to the inside, the semi-cube entry, door-to-door with him. There's no room for the 07 to tuck down. 51 of Matthews next on deck. He'd then to be trailed by the 09 and Dylan Bates. So the 07, not the only car in this situation. You've also got the 12 car, Cole Cabré, pinched up to the outside. He'll find a spot down low now as he tucks in 9 behind Bates, leaving just the 07 still stranded out there, and that was a shot into the fence into turn 2.
Didn't lose a whole lot of momentum, but lost just enough to get Ryan Matthews to the inside. The regular and a legend car at Langley takes a look to that inside. Got the 09 in behind him, a Dylan Bates, and there's that number 12 car back to the inside line. The 07 might be able to find a spot into line here, but looks like Bates going to plug that hole once again, and the line continues to get longer on the inside. The 07 of Eli trying to find a spot to the low side.
Nothing else changing up front. A couple of drivers look at the 5 machine of Fred Moreau. Thought about it. He's actually going to dive down to the apron and head to pit lane just 9 laps in. So Moreau's going to bow out of a top 10 position as everything else continues. Top 2 still Colin Allman and Justin Trombley. They've opened up a small advantage over 3rd position on back. But the 07 of Eli, the 09 of Machina, Dylan Bates, still the fight to watch as they try to get closer to the top 10 spot. And for the first time in a while, Eli actually better that time at turn 4 as the 09 bobbled a bit, but he recovers.
Trying to find a spot into line on the inside, easier said than done. If he can get a couple of runs off the corner like he has the last couple laps, he may be able to clear the 09 of Bates to the inside. Eli trying to make it happen, and they continue to line up in behind. The 6's Schaeffer has also joined this little battle as the 09 up the racetrack a little bit in turn number 2, trying to stop that momentum from that outside line of Eli, and couldn't really do it. They still remain side by side. The 12 car starting to look.
And this may be what the 07 machine of Eli's got to do, is he's not giving the 09 much space to come off of the corner when the 09 wants. The 07 pinches a little bit later on exit. And the 09 machine, therefore, you can see him really pushing up, banging to get into the throttle. Almost contact again. And he's going to keep a nose in there, but you wonder how many times Bates is going to get away with it, and that was the last time. Eli finally hangs on the outside and actually takes a spot back, defending to P12 and getting this group single file.
And now the 12 flashes the nose to the inside, another side-by-side battle. So after Bates was on the inside for so many laps, he's going to dance to the outside. You see what happened there. That field gets lined up in behind. It's about 8 or 9 cars back the Conga line, back to another side-by-side battle between Derek Robinson and Drivlicki as they go at it with the 19 of Briar Leprod also in there as well. So you really don't want to get those guys stacked up, because it seems like you get on the outside, you make one mistake, you're going to lose 8 or 9 positions here.
And the way that these drivers are doing to battle now, this group around P20 that you were talking about, Robinson, DeVricky, and LaPrade, they're about 7 seconds almost already off for the race leaders. That's nearly half a lap back. So, yeah, you do want to fight for these positions off for the race start, but this place doesn't take that long to get around. Everybody pretty much lapping in the 16-second range. Race leaders down by 16.3s, and towards the back of the pack, that number gets higher towards the 0.5s and 0.6s, but you don't have a lot of time on a long green flag run until the race leader is going to start to catch up to the back of the field here. So you want to get these spots done and completed out of the way ASAP, or you're going to find yourself track laps down, and even if you do get some yellows, that's going to make the night very difficult on you. So a couple of duos going side by side. Dylan Bates still stuck up top after he was unable to finish off Kyle Eli. The 07 was able to clear him up top, duck down low, and immediately after we saw Cole Cabré dive to his inside. The 12 has cleared him. The 6 car, Joe Schaeffer Jr. next on deck. Side by side battle up inside the top 15.
Schaeffer takes a peek to the inside of the 09 of Bates as they'll dance for what is position number 14. You mentioned it, though. It's a long race, Evan. 250 laps. You don't want to get yourself behind the 8 ball early, but you still want to have something and survive for those last 100, last 50 laps to try to win this event. A lot of those drivers that transferred in through those heat races and the last chance qualifier really have to bide their time right now and make sure you have all the fenders on it to get to that 100 to go mark and get to that pit stop you're going to have to make at some point in this race, as the 6 car of Schaeffer will lose that spot to Bates, and it looks like he's got some company on the outside, the 26, trying to take the top to one more position.
Yeah, just try to kind of compound on top of this, and everybody now, maybe at this point in the run, seeing that outside line as a viable option, and didn't take more than a lap for the 26 Machida Medeiros to complete that move. So Schaeffer drops one on the inside line. He has dropped 3, in fact, if you count that one as well, for the start of this race. That has now been 24 laps in. Again, no yellows early on in this one, pretty clean. We did see Fred Moreau drop out of the top 10 earlier in this one. The 5 machine is behind the wall and out of this race. Couldn't tell you what the issue was with the 5 car. Didn't see any noticeable damage, but he did come down for a top 10 spot. His night is done. He's gone to garage. Only he and Sean Cool are off of the lead lap. Cool started this race P9, but is 4 laps down in 30th right now.
And some of those drivers we expected to move and move early are doing so. Jimmy Mullis started 11th. He's already in the top 5 and chasing down a little pack that's battling for second place, led by Justin Trombley. Alex McCollum is on the move as well, started in position number 12, and he's on the back bumper of the 61 of Milbachler as they battle for position number 7. And Devin Morgan has also moved from outside the top 10 all the way up to position number 6. So some early movers in this one, just 30 laps in, or 28 laps this time by into this race. Still lots of laps to work, but right now Colin Allman out in front by almost a second over Justin Trombley, Ty Majeski, and that little battle in behind for second on back.
Yeah, this battle for P2 is something new. It was the Trombley and Allman show, as I mentioned. Those top 2 had been able to run away from the field just a little bit. Majeski kind of hanging out at about 9/10 back, but since then, I don't think it's really Majeski closing on Trombley. I think it's just the 34 car dropping back a little bit because Allman's pulled over a second out in front of him. Majeski, Bullis, Pataska, rest of your top 5 all stacked up, ducks in a row, closing in now at the back of the 34. I think it is Trombley who's looking for a little bit more consistency at this stage of the run, and if the 91 gets positioned on him, we could see, like we've seen many times tonight, where that whole line of cars will kind of try to jump on that, take advantage at the same time.
Justin Trombley is smart, though. He's been in these races before. He's been on this iRacing service for years and knows how these races play out, as does Ty Majeski as he works to the inside of the 34 of Justin Trombley. The 40 of Jimmy Mullis also trying to get to the inside of the driver from Maine, and he'll do so side by side for position number 3. Is Majeski going to escape with position number 2? Trombley trying to hold that outside line, but unlike those battles that we saw outside the top 10 a little bit earlier, Evan, he may be able to skirt into line here right in front of Pataska in the 23 as they'll get back to single file racing. So Trombley loses 2 spots and now rides in position number 4 with the 23 of Pataska taking a little look.
And I still think that 23 of Pataska's got enough speed here to get on this 34 machine. I think you'll start to see, if this goes, 34 laps from now, that Majeski Buller's going to pull just a little bit. As a little bit, just slightly slower 34 to Trombley was able to get down in front of Pataska for P4 and 5. And the 23 machine doesn't matter if you're a little bit quicker. You do have to get that run off of the corner to get the positioning. And kind of as we expected, they're side by side, 2 at a time. Mullis to the inside of Majeski. He'll take second away. And at the same time, it looked like that 34 to Trombley give the inside to Pataska. So the 23 car does find third.
We'll see if Jimmy Mullis can pull away from Ty Majeski. It's about a second and a half. This battle for second place is behind your leader, Colin Allman. And keep in mind, you got to conserve your stuff here. We keep saying that, but it's a long race. There's going to be at least a couple of cautions. So Colin Allman up in front, yes, he's got a comfortable lead, but you have to believe right now maybe he's just riding, maybe learning some things about his race car in this run. As another driver looking to make a top 5 run, Devin Morgan in the 112 has made his way up to position number 6 and knocking on the back door of Justin Trombley. The 112 we documented started outside the top 10 and now looking to make his way into the top 5 as he chases down this battle for position number 4.
And you mentioned that last year's race winner in this event came from 14th position, pretty much halfway down through the grid. And a key to getting yourself up here early is to obviously take advantage of this early run, not even a fifth of the way through the race. And Morgan having leapfrogged McCollum out of the gate, but those two drivers have pretty much followed each other through the field. The advantage to Morgan by about a second, but 13th on the grid and 12th on the grid up to P6 and 7. And the 112 car's got two cars nice and close to him. They're both losing to Mullis and Majeski, who have started to kind of stretch what was a four-car group in the two sets of two. I would expect Morgan wants to get this job done sooner rather than later, because he wants to keep climbing. He's only 2.5 seconds off of the race leader. He's got great pace. Here he goes down to the inside in a fight for fifth.
I think Trombley saw him coming, let him have that inside line, and he charged the inside of that corner to pick up what will be position number 5. We'll see if Pataska makes it easy on the 112 of Morgan as they go down into corner number 1. Nothing doing there on the entrance to the first corner on lap number 43, but Pataska has to feel the fire in behind the 112 of Morgan, trying to set him up. Goes to the second groove, the 112 of Morgan to the inside. We'll go side by side off corner number 4 for position number 4. Pataska has it at the line, but Morgan going to have the run into corner number 1. And keep an eye on the 34, see if he can get in here and pick up one more spot.
He's the spectator in this battle as you see these two cars go at it side by side. Advantage to Morgan. So the 112 car did exactly what it needed to do. Morgan down to a race high position number 4. Small challenge back by Pataska as he gets on the bumper, peeks to the inside. Probably doesn't have anything for the 112, and out for Morgan. He does have a second between he and Majeski in third. A little bit of clean racetrack in front. Let's see how fast this 112 is. You saw that time in the corner. He's dipping those left side tires down and onto the apron in 1 and 2. You don't really have that line down here in 3 and 4. You got to use that pit wall as a guesstimation, but that 112 is really hooking it all the way to the bottom, trying to get this thing to rotate right here on the center.
And your top 3, when you look at the times, they're all turning 16.6s, and Devin Morgan the same time last time by. So all within a tenth of each other when it comes to laps, the last few laps. Not really losing a whole lot of time and not really gaining a whole lot of time the last 10 laps or so between Allman, Mullis, and Majeski. And now Morgan begins to pull away a little bit from this battle for position number 5, but doesn't make up a whole lot of ground to those 3 in front. So the race pace seems to be about the same for those top 4, at least the last few laps by, but there's still a little bit of a gap in between them as they built off the green flag. Allman back to Mullis is still over a second.
And I'm watching as Mullis does have that separation between he and Allman to see if that's going to close in at all. Last time by, they ran lap times that were just 1/1000th of a second different than one another. Almost ridiculously even as Majeski kind of ends up in a bubble here if he's going to continue to slide back for the 40, because I'm not seeing Morgan get this time back as fast as I thought he would that last time, about a third of a tenth of a second better, so not a ton of time back, but that little bit is going to compound itself. But you know, you look at the lap times on their own, P4 Devin Morgan was the best car on track the last 2-3 in a row.
And the 67 of Allman just whipped off a 67 and a little bit quicker than the 7s and the 8s that are being turned. Time Majeski the last time by to 16.85, so lost a little bit of ground that last time by. Did Time Majeski, and once again falls at a 74 the last lap by. So Time Majeski in position number 3 of the top 4. He's probably 3rd or 4th. Colton Allman has been whipping off a couple of quick laps the last time by to maintain that lead position. 53 laps completed. Quick start to this Fall Brawl Spectacular presented by H&H Science Supply Incorporated, and putting on a show up in front for these top 5. Alex McCollum has reeled in the 23 of Pataska. He's passed Justin Trombley, so another driver that is on the move. The number 10 has entered the top 6, and looking at a top 5 run closing in on that 23, but a car length away.
Yeah, at this point in the race, again, 55 laps complete, no yellows thus far. Half of the cars inside of the top 6 started outside of the top 10. Mullis 11th to 2nd, Morgan 13th to 4th, and you just mentioned Alex McCollum 12th to 6th. He'll be a top 5 car momentarily once he can set up the 23 of Pataska to complete this move. And there's a whole host of other cars that are making moves. Ryan Matthews from 15th on the grid. He's cracked the top 10. He's trying to get a move around James Milbachler right now for 8th, 9th, 10th on the back. That's a group of race cars that I think are probably the closest set of 4 or 5 that we're seeing on track tonight. So a handful of cars going to forwards, but anytime you've got drivers going into the positives, there's drivers losing their spots just as quick.
And a lot of those quick passes being made right now. Colton Davis in the 27. He started scratch on the field with that end of longest line penalty. He's up to position number 16, so about halfway through the field. He just made a move. Amadero's for position number 16 and closes in on Schaeffer, about a half second or so in front of him. But he's making up some ground. You mentioned guys falling back just ahead of Colton Davis is Kyle Eli. He's fallen back a few spots since starting inside the top 10, back to position number 13, and he's got Bates right in behind him, battling with the 12 for position number 12. So some comers and some goers here at this point in the race, but the middle of the pack, as we mentioned, top 10 got locked in on time trials. Everybody else had to race their way in, so if you didn't hit your mark during that time trial run, you had some work to do, and some of those drivers showing it right now as they started outside the top 10 and have made their way into the top 10 by racing their way in the first 60 laps.
Yeah, everybody with the exception of Cole Cabre, who started 14th and has gone to P12, so he's still in the positive even, just not by as good of a margin, but immediately outside of the top 10. 11th is Bullis. Now he's in second position. McCollum from 12th to 5th. Devin Morgan from 13th to 4th. So those immediate drivers who were the best in those race your way in events last night are the ones who were very fast out of the gate and pretty quickly, in fact, jumping on the cars, were able to get in based on that time, and that started this race at the tail end of the top 10 to begin with. So curious that extra little bit of race time as well may have helped them out in the long run.
And your leader beginning to encounter some more lap traffic, and he's going to come into some lap traffic here in about 10 laps or so, and it's the tail end of the field. Sean Cool right ahead of your leader right now, Evan, and he is 4 laps down already, about to be a 5th, and he started inside the top 10 after his time trial run back on Tuesday night. And then it's a couple of car lengths up to Derek Robinson and the rest of the back end of the field. Matthew Eddy trying to move in that 88 car as well, but they better get to stepping because the leader is coming. 65 laps completed this time as Sean Cool will go 1 more lap down.
Yeah, Cool's going to drop from 4 to 5 down, and Keith Medeiros is going to lose a lap as he brings the number 26 car down to the pit lane. So his night may be done early as well. We saw Fred Moreau drop out earlier. Mark Royer lost his lap, but that's something else that Colin Allman's going to have to be dealing with now. I mentioned that not a long racetrack, that once you get into the thick of traffic, there's going to be a lot of it, and there's about a dozen race cars within 5 seconds of him up the road that are all lapped cars. And of course, you catch the first few, they're going to be a little bit more on pace, and as the higher up into that scoring order you get, but we mentioned it with the practice times, fastest to the very slowest was less than 3/4 of a second of difference. So these aren't going to be cars that Allman could just breeze past. He's going to have to work, and I think the big thing the 67's hoping for is that they don't get engaged in a battle while he's trying to overtake them, hoping that they're kind of paying attention in that rear view mirror, and the spotters letting them know, hey, race leader's coming through, give him some space.
And for the most part, those guys near the back of the field right now, single file, trying to find what's wrong with their race car to maybe come down and make some changes on their first pit stop. The side-by-side battle at the back, Chris Canfield 03, the 7 of Kyle Souza. Donald Clark just picked up a spot on Souza as he falls 1 more position. But for the most part, these drivers picking up some quick positions and not really concerning themselves right now with each other, rather than trying to log some laps here and get a long run in. 70 laps completed this time by for these drivers near the back of the field. And as we mentioned, they better get going because your leader is can see them on the same straightaway.
Healthy bit of action going on to the tail end of the top 10 right now. Ty Spearman in the 92 machine battling with James Milbachler. Both these cars have dropped out of top 5 spots where they started, but they are in quite the exchange right now as it's Ryan Matthews in the 51 car who just recently was able to make the move on Milbachler. Spearman also kind of teamed up with him and picked up the pieces, made the move as well. So Matthews, another driver, going into the positive, 15th on the grid to a top 8 spot again. A car immediately outside of the top 10. The top finishers for the LCQ racing last night, better than the cars that got in based on qualifying times. Continue continuing that trend with the latest move. Again, that 50 to Matthews to P8. And just behind him, you'll see Branden Wilkinson. He'll go to the inside of Milbacher. That's a fight for P10.
Yeah, Wilkinson started inside the top 10 in 10, so he's trying to get that position back that he started in here this evening. Finished in 4th in this race back last year and looking to better that, get on the podium and possibly take away that $200 cash for the top spot here this evening when they take the checkered flag at lap 250. The 56 continues to work that inside line, can't clear Milbacher off the corner, little sideways off of corner number 4, gets that thing a little bit loose, drives it down deep into corner number 1, up the track a little bit. Milbacher should have the run, little slide off that 56 off of corner number 2. What a fantastic little battle for position number 10, as once again they come up off of corner number 4. 76 laps completed, and Milbacher continues to hold the spot.
Well, it's good to see that these drivers are able to pick and choose if they want to try to make the move inside or out. And it seems like with relative freedom, they could make either or work. When it was Matthews making the pass back on Milbacher a little bit ago, he was able to make the pass down on the inside, and that's what Wilkinson's trying to do now. But I mean, that 61 machine isn't totally disadvantaged. Look at the 56 pushing up on him, trying to get a little bit, not necessarily physical, but trying to crowd him a little bit to finally get this thing closed out. But the 61 car, as more rubber gets put down and that lane gets winding down a little bit over time, cars on the outside are going to have a better opportunity on exit. The 61 comes flying back up, and it's close quarter stuff inside of the top 10, but some 7 seconds off of the race lead. And still call it Allman, as there you go, Wilkinson's got it.
Yeah, you don't want to pinch that guy off the corner at least this early, or at least force that issue too much early in the race, because you could see it come around again at the end if that bumper is used and you're looking for a position at the end, as the 56 of Wilkinson puts the 36 of Mark Royer in the rear view mirror. And cool little scheme on that car here this evening. A lot of the faces that you see in this field are on that number 36 car here, so clever effort by Mark Royer as he falls in behind that battle for position number 10 on back. Wilkinson trying to close in on the number 92 is Spearman in front of him, and Ryan Matthews. They got away a little bit during that battle, but trying to reel them back in is Wilkinson.
He is. He's trying to keep this one a fair fight, and now you're going to start to see more lapped cars in the mix here. So the 36 machine was up top. He's a lap down. That is Mark Royer, as we mentioned. So you see that yellow number 36 up top. Not a side-by-side battle, just a lapped car that your race leaders are working around. Speaking of leaders, Allman now just putting Derek Robinson a lap down from P27. So that leaves 26 cars on the lead lap. And admittedly was a little bit hesitant, Tim, off of the get-go to start to talk specifics about strategy, of course, figuring that in a short track racing, you're going to see your fair share of contact. And the point that you mentioned, based on what you've observed over the course of this race week with this Fall Brawl Spectacular, drivers with a cool head early on, all of a sudden 85 laps down to this 250 lap contest. If it can stay green, what do we think pit cycle is going to be like? Again, as we mentioned, it's an 8-tire race, so you've got 4 on the car to start. You can get a set of lefts and a set of rights down on pit road, but that's all that's down there for you. You can take 4 at once. You can split them up, right sides now, lefts later, or the other way around. But that's it. So when you make your pit call, you really have to commit.
Indeed you do, and right now you definitely wait for a caution. You don't pit under green unless we go 170 laps consecutive green flag, and then you start to hover over that panic button and try to figure out what you want to do. But I would wait until at least the halfway point, 125, 150. You see a caution around that point. That's when you're going to see a lot of those drivers down on pit road. Caution flag comes out now. I still don't think you see the whole field down onto pit road, because I think you're going to see those guys wait it out a little bit and expect another caution flag as Allman completes 88 on the racetrack. And speaking of 88, the next up on the list for your leader is that 88 of Matthew Eddy, just about 5 lengths or so ahead of that lead car as the 67 comes by and completes one more lap. Lap number 89 of 250 completed.
The concern as well is if we stay green, that, if you're the race leader, you want to make math easy on yourself, or you like the decision to come in halfway, that would in theory be the best call for the long run. Is that, well, you come down to the pit lane, you're going to be stuck a lap down when that happens. As we go Dancy for the number 8 spot on track, the number 92 is Spearman battling with the 50 with Ryan Matthews. Matthews has been on the charge, and This 92 car, Spearman, though, not going to let him bully him around. He'll try down on the bottom, Tim, but, I mean, even if my strategy would best work, and it's not going to matter, there it is, a caution flag, and we're going to slow him down for the first time tonight. A couple of cars around. Looks like Ryan Blanchard is one of them, but it all started with a spinning Mark Royer.
A tough break for Mark Royer, and that number 9 of Blanchard has a little bit of damage to that race car, and have to come down and pull that out just a little bit. But as we said, first caution happens on lap number 92, and the field will be in behind the pace car for the first time this evening, and we'll see if any of that strategy that we just talked about comes to fruition here, and see if anybody decides to come down into pit road and throw tires at it.
It's just Royer trying to get out of the way, and was hit by the 07 of Kyle Eli in what was a battle for position amongst lead lap cars. And brings us down for the first time, and let's see who dives in. Couple of cars going to hit pit road this time through. Ty Majeski, highest runner, who's down to pit road. P3 going to be the first taker, and not a ton following him.
And it really doesn't surprise me right now at this point, with only one set of tires that you have. And when you look at those top 3, you really didn't see a ton of fall off between those drivers up in front. So it doesn't surprise me that these guys aren't coming down on pit road. So we'll see what happens, though, after these tires cool down a little bit. You get back to green flag racing. We'll see if there's any difference in between the running order, but Devin Morgan has really stepped it up as well. The 112 the last time by, being scored up here in position number 3.
The cars you see coming down this time through are the lapped cars, not able to come in and pit with the race leaders. So 9 first car in, no surprise. That's Blanchard, who was the first car lap down. Royer's also going to be in. Looks like Sean Cool stays out. Keith Medeiros is down, and that's everybody on track still. Fred Moreau still the only driver that has gone behind the wall in this one. And well, Colin Allman's going to stay up in front of the field. Right before that yellow came out, Tim, the point I was going to make is that, if you'd like to pit whenever, the concern is you pit, you're stuck down. And, of course, Ty Majeski now, if this race were to go green to the end, would be in a very good position. And, of course, if there's a yellow with 50 to go, other cars could decide to get their tires there. They're going to be a lot better. So it is a guess on what the right call is going to be, because nobody knows how this will play out, but it is an educated guess. These drivers have countless racing on the short tracks of the iRacing service, especially in Majeski's case. It's not just restricted to the top levels of Simmer. You see the top levels of the NASCAR National Touring Series as well, with starts even just this past racing season. So you try to guess, and you make the best decision that you can at the time, but that pit stop will have Majeski back P15 as the first car with fresh rubber.
And we'll see what happens if he comes through the field or not, and see how much fuel that he did take. And we talked about it off the top of the show, that these guys can make it from here on fuel if they pack it deep. So keep a close eye on that number 91 and see what he does, as he'll line up in 15th place. The lights were set to go off that time, but lights have come back on that iRacing Ford Mustang, so we'll continue to go around for one more lap. It moves Devin Morgan up to 3rd. It moves Alex McCollum to 4th, and Justin Trombley back up to position number 5. And how about Colton Davis? Davis started in position, well, at the back of the field in 31st after that end of the longest line penalty. He's going to start on the inside of row number 4. So he has been on the move in that JDR Graphics number 27, and see if he can move up a little bit closer towards the front of the field now that he's got a little bit of real estate closed in between some of these front runners.
There's only 2 cars right now in the top 14 that started top 10. Again, a lot of that was done with passing in the opening 85 laps or so of this race before we saw the yellow. But again, a lot of that as well has to do with the cars that trickled down to the pit lane, or some of those top 10ers like Majeski and some of the other cars 15th on the back. But it is still going to be Colin Allman at the very front. Green flag back in the air at lap number 99 for the first race start tonight. Cody Carmel is clear for 2nd. Morgan is safely in 3rd as well.
But Alex McCollum going to take a little look to the inside of the 10, trying to get Devin Morgan out of position number 3. But that's all it is down into corner number 3, as he'll fall into line to 4th in behind Ryan Matthews and Justin Trombley. Going to go side by side for position number 5. Colton Davis looks on from behind and takes a little peek to the inside, trying to follow Justin Trombley through and try to get to the inside of that number 51. It's going to get tight off of corner number 4, but Colton Davis able to get that inside line, or at least down into corner number 1. But Trombley still trying to clear Matthews. He'll do so here.
And a good job of the 51 Mission Matthews there. As soon as Trombley got him, he came swiping across the bumper of Davis as to not allow that car to get right back down to his inside. So the 51 finds a spot in line, and they'll single file out for the time being. Just behind him, Cabray in P8, Brian LaPrade in 9th, and then a little bit of a gap back to the next set of race cars. No change up front, though. Still Allman, Mullis, Morgan, McCollum, and Trombley. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the cars on fresh rubber are in a hornet's nest outside of the top 10, not able to get spots in bulk right off of the bat.
34 of Trombley has that 51 continuing to look. Ryan Matthews tried to set him up off of turn 4. He'll set him up enough to get to the inside, and Matthews will look at position number 5. The 27 of Davis in behind. The 51 of Matthews had to get right up close to the back bumper that last time by at a turn 4 to let Trombley know he was there, and might have almost manhandled him there a little bit off of corner number 4. Almost a little bit of a hip check to move that 34 up the hill. The 51 will take that position away, and now Colton Davis flashes the nose of that Ford to the inside and will look to pick up one more spot on Justin Trombley. Some great racing up here within the top 10 as two Fords go side by side just outside the top 5.
That's Trombley on the outside, who's trying to really squeeze the 27 down. So Davis, again, dipping those tires onto the flat of the racetrack at the apron. We've seen drivers doing that all night long. Down in 1 and 2, maybe a little bit less so here. And if they didn't touch, it was awfully close. But the 27 of Davis almost clear. Just a quarter panel holding it back, and there it is. So Davis does clear and get it back around the 34. And now Trombley's going to have to weather the storm because he's got Cabray to the inside. Oh, in contact. Cole Cabray pushed up. He'll hang on to it, but what a close call there.
And they continue to go at it. The 12 of Cabray now has the 19, peeking down to the inside. Brian LaPrade trying to pick up one more spot and trying to pick up the pieces. The 34 of Trombley falling back here and goes to the second groove down into corner number 1 and allows that 12 to drive it into the inside. It's closed in. Chris Canfield as well to this little battle. That's the battle for position number 7 on back.
And haven't talked a ton about that 03 machine to Chris Canfield tonight. Started 21st, has made his way up to the top 10. This battle is soon going to see some of the cars with the fresh tires close up on him as Ty Majeski's gotten to P12, and he's kind of harassing Daniel Pope II for P11, a little bit behind this group. But they single file out for just a moment, and there's so many different spots. You can look on the racetrack. Your top 2 cars, top 3 even, have not separated like they did on that last run. Devin Morgan is plastered on the back of Mullis for their number 2 spot now. They're both trying to get up to Allman, and there's a move for second. To the inside goes the 112, and Morgan goes to P2, takes it back away from Mullis.
And now we'll see what kind of race pace these guys can hold up in front. We saw the 67 of Allman. We saw Jimmy Mullis be able to hold that race pace. We saw Ty Majeski a little bit earlier being able to really hold with those top 2. Now Devin Morgan's had to work his way up through a little bit of the thicker traffic, but now to position number 2. We'll see what Morgan has as we move on here. Lap 113 in the books, closing in on that halfway point here this evening. It looks like Morgan stepping away a little bit from that 40 of Jimmy Mullis as they dive it down into corner number 3.
You can see Morgan was starting to see, I mentioned your top 3 were pretty close. Colin Allman was just starting to get a little bit of distance, so he made the move on to Mullis, and the 40 car really didn't want to push the issue. He wasn't pinching him down or anything, just kind of nodded his head and allowed him to get on through, tucked right back in line. Still your top 5, though, all within 1 second of each other. Colton Davis, one of the drivers who has been on the move. Tail end of this, maybe he could make some noise, try to get around Matthews into McCollum, P5 and 4 respectively in front. Other than that, though, single file it out for the rest of the top 15.
And we saw that on the first run, trying to find a place to ride right now. We saw Majeski come down and take fuel on that first caution flag to set himself up to put him in the window to get to the end of the race. We're getting closer to that 125 mark. If we do see a caution anywhere between here and probably 150, you're going to see the bulk of those drivers back down on pit road to get fuel, and they might even throw some tires at these race cars if they're down there, or try to take that track position and maybe gamble with some fuel only. But you see those single file line starting to form right now. Nobody really pushing the issue within the top 10. And looking back here, I think the first battle that I really see is around Chris Canfield. He's putting some pressure on the number 12 as Souza picked up a spot on that last lap by and now begins to pour a little pressure on Briar LePron inside the top 10.
LaPrade, somebody else who has been on the move, 28th on the grid, a top 10 car. Kyle Souza, the one attacking him, was 29th on the grid. They're going to go side by side for the number 8 position, and it is pretty handily. Souza on the inside, clearing him in that battle for 8th and 9th position. Also, I mentioned Ty Majeski trying to make his way through the field. Tim really doing all of this on the tires that he started with. Assumed that was a decision to come down pit road, second inspection of fuel only. So he's still got tires available. Again, you did mention off of the top drivers would need fuel at some point. So as other drivers hope that this stays green, they would probably go for their fuel and tires at the same time. Majeski right now just for the fuel at that lap number 90 break.
Yeah, it sets himself up to maybe get some track position when these drivers come back down onto pit road, and assuming that some of those drivers maybe don't take tires, and maybe you see a little bit of strategy trying to get that track position ahead of maybe taking 4 tires on these caution flags. So keep a little eye on that as we continue with these caution flags a little bit later on. We're getting close to the halfway point in this one, and the number 112 of Devin Morgan is keeping the 67 of Allman honest up in front, about 2 lengths back to the 112 in position number 2, and they pulled away by about 3/10 over Jimmy Mullis. So we're coming by this time. Next time by will be the halfway point in this race, and we're starting to see some comers and goers, but those guys that may have missed their mark in qualifying now up in the top 5 and in the top 10 have a shot at this.
And the strategy is going to be a big factor as well, depending on how this plays out. Again, nobody said that you had to come down and get the tires. They are available to you, so I wonder if it does stay green, the time that Majeski gave up is going to be negated by the fact that he may not need fuel to go to the end of this race, but of course has not taken on tires. So there's all these question marks, and of course it all comes down to X amount of, it is in your control, and then there's also a Y factor, which is the unknown, and we've only had that 1 yellow, but as you mentioned, that time halfway home, 125 down now, just a little under 125 to go, and a very good pace to open up this Fall Brawl. It is still the top 16, having only 3 cars who started top 10 still sitting there. It is Colton Allman, who started from the race lead and has been up front all night long, along with Trombley in 7th and Ty Majeski P12.
As the 112 of Devin Morgan begins to pour some pressure on the 67 of Colton Allman. Great entry into corner number 1. He is on the back bumper of Allman. This is the first time all night long we've really seen any pressure being poured to the race leader. We saw that green flag run extend everybody, but now Devin Morgan goes to the inside. The 67 lets him have that inside line, and we'll go side by side for the lead. And how about Kyle Souza? Where did the 7 car come from? He's closing in on this side by side battle in front of him.
Yes, Souza's absolutely been on rails since the restart, and he might spoil the party for both Allman and Devin Morgan. The 112 car trying to work the inside. It has been Colton Allman's race from the drop of the green flag. We've seen cars be close to ish, about 5-10 laps off for the restarts, but he has quickly taken control. Not this time, and on the inside line, Morgan gets the lap lead. So the 67 car's got a real threat here, and in the case of that 7 of Souza, he may be the best of these top 3, as Allman now dropping back, and he is now clearing for the top spot. The 112 of Devin Morgan to the race lead.
We talked about Kyle Souza almost falling a lap down in that first green flag run, and now he's battling for position number 2, points that thing to the outside. We'll have to go back and see if he came down pit road on that first caution flag, Evan, and maybe took tires on that race car, because that thing is lightning quick. To the outside, he goes to 2nd, and we'll try to look at the lead, Devin Morgan, this time. But it's also closed in Jimmy Mullis. It's closed in Ryan Matthews. We got a battle on our hands within the top 5. Souza takes a look to the outside, dives it down to the inside, and he'll make it look easy to the inside. New leader, Kyle Souza.
And I just looked back at a pit stop. That car's driving like there's no way it didn't take tires. He did come down to pit road. I did not see that car get jacked up to imply that it was getting tires. But the way he's driving, it would seem pretty clear that that's what happened, unless Kyle Souza is the greatest sandbagger out there and just decided to drive half a second slower every single lap by, because he is on a set of rails from 29th now to the race lead. And he's going to be running last time by 0.3 of a second better than Morgan that lap alone. That time another 10th in the back pocket. Best car on the racetrack. As some of these other cars, though, as you mentioned, not to forget, Mullis P4 under attack. Here's Matthews to the inside in the 51 car. He'll take that one away.
And now the 27 of Colton Davis takes a look to the inside of Jimmy Mullis. Two teammates going at it for a spot as Mullis falls back. Davis a little sideways at a turn. Number 2 caught the apron there out of that second corner, but still makes a spot on his teammate. Look back, Kyle Souza, 2 right side tires the last time by, so he's definitely making it work. He's still got lefts in the pits, but with a racetrack like this, you're definitely going to use the right sides more than you will the left side tires. Here's something else that I want to keep in mind as we work forward, Evan. Ty Majeski came down for fuel only on his pit stop. Obviously, Kyle Souza came down for rights. He would have put fuel in that race car as well. If this thing goes green, we ran the first 90 laps green, we go to about 170 or so. These guys that did not come down pit road are going to have to come down under the green flag. So it could play out for a guy like Souza, a guy like Ty Majeski that has that fuel to go to the end of the race, or pretty darn close to the end of the race. If these guys have to pit under green, it's going to keep them on the lead lap, and guys that stayed out like Allman and Morgan 1 or more laps down.
And for Souza to be this much better just on the 2 tires may be a call that is influenced by his uncertainty on how the rest of this race is going to go. Just think about how fast he would be if he decided to go and to put left side tires on it as well. I mean, he's pulled away almost to a second already ahead of David Morgan, who had just passed just laps prior Colin Allman, who had been the best car of the night. So maybe this gives him some freedom that if we do see a late race yellow, he has something at his disposal. I know left sides aren't going to work as good as the rights, and you see how good 2 tires, I guess, on the right side are right now. Left side's better than nothing, but I still think that Souza may have played this one the best here. Again, we'll wait and see. But these laps are going to start to wind down real fast, and once all of those cars in the lead lap that did not pit, and it was a majority of your race leaders that decided not to pit on that one and only yellow thus far, it'll really clean up some space up front.
If this thing stays green and these drivers have to come down pit road in another 25, 30-ish laps, Kyle Souza looks like a hero. If the caution flag comes out in the next 25, 30 laps or so, Kyle Souza is going to have some track position, but then we'll see that strategy play out and see if anybody does decide to take 2 rights or take all 4 tires on that stop. But it all depends when these caution flags do fly here this evening, as the 7 comes up at a corner number 4 and will continue to lead this thing, completing 146 on the racetrack. We're closing in already on 100 to go in this race. These laps are clicking by, and looks like Souza will have Mark Royer to deal with here, as Royer will fall another lap down this time by, as he'll go a 4th lap down.
And you can start to see it now as well, that the sun is dipped behind the grandstands, and turn it into a night race as the lights come on as well. That could certainly change up how the racetrack drives a little bit. Track temp has crept down now to 90 degrees, a lot warmer at the start of this one. And Souza there figured that the cool conditions would help him out a little bit. He had a big bobble just that last time, headed off and into the corner. So that is a fast race car that's a little bit loose, and that's the fastest car you can get, one that's got a little bit of freedom to play around with it. He is now in the thick of lap traffic, including a team car in front of him, Derek Robinson, who's 24th. He'll get lapped this time.
And Derek fell a lap down in that first green flag run that we had a little bit earlier on. Looks like he may have got the free pass and back on the lead lap, but now back 1 lap down. Matthew Eddy is next up on the list for the 7 of Kyle Souza, but he's a quarter straightaway or so ahead of the number 7 car as he comes up at a corner number 2 and sprints ahead of his teammate in the number 69. And looking back here, it looks like Devin Morgan just behind these 2 lap cars, going to have to deal with them momentarily. Ryan Matthews has made his way to 3rd. Colton Davis and Colin Allman has found all his way to position number 5. And Looks like Jimmy Mullis just made the move on the 67. So your pole sitter, who was so strong early in this race, now has fallen outside the top 5, with Jimmy Mullis making his way into the top 5 again in car number 40.
Colton Davis, the latest driver to make the move on him and get around them. The 27 machine wasn't even one of the drivers who opted to come down to the pit lane to get serviced under the one and only yellow. So, Colin Allman Mullis now also around in the 40 car. The 67 hadn't had to fight in traffic like this at all. It was pretty much his race out in front, and at all times had a pretty healthy margin, but in traffic, Colin Allman doesn't have that bite. You can ignore Souza, who's got the fresh tires. It is now nearly 2 seconds in front of Morgan for what would be the largest race lead we've seen tonight at lap 155. But even amongst his peers who didn't take any service, he is now starting to look like he doesn't have what he had earlier on.
Yeah, it looks like the handle has just gone away on that race car. The last time by at a corner number 2, it just looked like it pushed a little bit out of that second corner as they put a lap on Royer in the 36. And up the racetrack it goes again as Royer LePrand gets the 36 of Mark Royer right ahead of him and almost had a moment off of corner number 2, putting him another lap down. But now you're at the point where you're holding on, and we're at 157. These guys can go 170-ish is what I was told on the fuel. So we're 10 laps away from some of these guys running it dry and having to come down into green.
And with that being the fuel number, you just kind of backs up what we already expected with Majeski and the other drivers who came down to the pit lane, including Kyle Souza, who opted to take tires when Ty did not. And I'm sure there were other drivers on both ends of that spectrum as well. That yellow flag after the opening 80 laps was deep enough into the race to give them the fuel to go the distance. Now, there is a chance that we go a little bit over 250 laps. Depends on how the end of it plays out. Up to 2 attempts at a green white checker to finish if we so require a little bit of overtime at the end of the night. I still think the margin not tight enough to be a decision maker, and those who got fuel, if they filled it all the way up, would be good to go the distance, as this race now looks down on 90 laps to go with Souza still in front. Morgan second. Matthews in a battle right now. 51 car. He's got the 27 of Davis on his bumper for a top 3 spot.
See that pressure being applied, and Jimmy Mullis not too far behind. This battle for position number 3. Ryan Matthews has about a car length between himself and the last chance qualifier winner from last evening as he tries to crack the podium for the first time this evening. Colton Davis has been on a mission and has got one more spot to get at least a top 3 run going here. Right behind him, though, Jimmy Mullis in the 40, rounding out your top 5, and Colin Allman's fallen off the pace of this trio just a little bit, about 2 lengths or so back is that number 67 car. But now we're at that magic moment right now, Evan. You don't want to run it completely dry because you don't want to run out on the racetrack. When do we start seeing these guys coming down onto pit road? We're at least 5 laps away or so from seeing these guys coming down or potentially running it dry on the racetrack, which would bring out a caution flag. So this is a very tricky time here for some of these front runners who have to come back to pit road.
The chances of something happening, if you come down now versus 5 laps from now are pretty slim, but you would really be kicking yourself if you had enough fuel to get to 170 and you pit at 165 and 2 laps later there's a yellow, you're trapped down. So that's kind of the opposite of what we normally see with drivers running out of fuel. Is typically the cars who stay out and kind of run their fuel to the end of the drivers who have not been in the best of positions over the course of a race. So when all the race leaders pit, it's those cars who stay out, try to catch a yellow before kind of giving up. It's the opposite, though. These are the cars that had run up front for the majority of the night, stayed out, need the fuel to be able to get that extra little distance. But I feel like even though there's some cars still getting a little bit squirrely here and there throughout the racetrack, cars are starting to dive to pit road. We just saw Alex McCollum drive down. I think you're going to see that mass influx in about a 5-lap window.
Yeah, the 112 just came down onto pit road. Your second place driver, Devin Morgan. Fuel going into that car, and right side tires going on the 112 as well. We'll see if he takes 4 tires or not. Keep a half eye on that 112, and I believe he may be taking 4 tires on this car. Indeed he is. So your second place driver, former second place driver in a Devin Morgan, taking 4 tires and fuel on his stop, as Ryan Matthews still out on the racetrack. Jimmy Mullis, Colin Allman up there as well with Briar LaPrade. So it looks like we may have seen Colton Davis also slip onto pit road on that last lap.
You're going to see a majority of the field be a lap down here sooner rather than later, expecting to see the rest of the drivers who pitted on that first exchange now kind of cycle back up and into the better positions. And the race for the first couple of spots a lap down are going to be the drivers who had been up front for the 112 and Devin Morgan. Just kind of looking back on the pit stop for the 112 machine, he did go for 4 tires and he had to sit in there to get that thing full of fuel. So that car, well, I guess he didn't need necessarily a full tank, but he had to sit down there to get it fueled up for enough to go the distance. And that was what, Tim, close to about a half a tank compared to what they just ran?
Yeah, and I'm looking at some of these other drivers. Looks like Ryan Matthews is going to take 2 tires. Colton Davis was fuel only on the number 27 car, and it's going to save you a little bit of time on the racetrack. So I'm surprised. I was going to be surprised if these other drivers only took fuel only, but Ryan Matthews is going to take 4 tires on his number 51 car. So Devin Morgan not alone in that 4-tire call. The 67 car is taking left side, so I would assume he took 4 tires as well. He's down and away at the end of pit road.
All of these stops continuing on through. Only 14 cars on the lead lap at the moment. Of course, look up top of the screen. You'll see where everybody kind of runs right now. And not to say that it's not the true running order, but if this race could go the distance without another yellow, it is. If there is one, it certainly changes the strategy play. But up front, Kyle Souza all of a sudden is way in control and admittedly flew under our radar over that first exchange of yellow flag stops. Some 6 seconds almost. The top of Trombley, P2. Majeski, who went with the fuel only, is up to 3rd. Now the funny thing is the lapped cars are going to be the faster ones on the track.
And we're seeing those drivers that came down to that lap 90 caution and either take tires or definitely take fuel because they're still out here on the racetrack past that 170 magic number. But Souza now 5.5 seconds up and almost 6 seconds up. Ty Majeski sitting in position number 3. But you look at all those drivers that are 1, 2, and 3 laps down because they had to come down and get service to their race cars. You're going to pack it full. You may as well get at least 2 tires on your race car. Colton Davis played the fuel only, but Devin Morgan in the 112, I believe, is out in front of him, albeit they are both 2 laps down, scored in 14th and 15th place respectively. Colin Allman scored his 2 laps down as well, sitting in position number 13. So strategy being played out here. If you asked me at the start of the night if we were going to have green flag pit stops here, I probably would have told you that you were crazy. But these drivers putting on an absolute clinic out here. Fantastic show by these drivers from SARA.
Yeah, that's why we didn't talk about it right off of the bat. And of course, as soon as I started to get into it, about lap 80, we did see one. But two laps is kind of the margin that you lose by taking a green flag pit stop, because the cars that are a single lap down, Eddie, Robinson, and Harberts, have not pitted on this exchange. Those are cars that just got lapped and have been running a lap down. So you've got to really look at the first car 2 laps down to see who's on that cycle, and that's Allman and Morgan, exactly the running order as we would expect. But a 2-lap deficit is not going to be something you overcome. And even if you do get a yellow, Tim, for the race leaders, if those guys don't start to, I guess your former race leaders that are 2 laps down, if they don't start to get a lot back now, well, you can only get so much on a yellow flag being down 2. You skip over the pit lane. If you used up all your tires, it doesn't matter anyways. You can get from 2 down to 1 down if you're lucky enough. But I mean, this thing takes a lot of those drivers out of it.
Trombley stretched his to almost 180 laps when it came to the fuel. He just came down pit road from position number 2, and he took fuel only, no tires on the stop for the 34. But you look at this thing, I would assume we're going to see a caution the next 70 laps before this thing is all said and done. But even if we do, Kyle Souza, Ty Majeski are probably not coming back down onto pit road. They took their fuel when they came down onto pit road on that lap 90 caution. They can make it the rest of the way. We just saw Justin Trombley go nearly 180 laps on his tank. I don't think these guys are going to make up 2 laps under green. Devin Morgan takes a look underneath the 91 of Ty Majeski to put him ahead of him, but there's a 2-lap difference in between those 2 cars right now. So if this thing stays green, Kyle Souza is probably going to victory lane, but this is why we run a 250-lap race. You run it to the end and see what comes out strategy-wise. But Kyle Souza's crew chief looks like a magician right now.
Well, he said off at the top that it's going to come down to who's got the fastest race car, who's the smartest out there, and wherever on the spectrum between those two, this race may fall, and the smarts is what has got that 7 Kyle Souza out in front. Again, you are seeing all of these cars that have pitted, even for the cars, obviously, you've gone for maybe just 2 or 4 tires are faster, but it's only by a bit more than a half a second. I mean, the tire fall off has not been astronomical in this race. So I totally agree with him with the fact that you're looking at 62 laps to go the next time by. That's not time at the intervals that is going to start to trail off the deeper into the run on your new rubber that you got. I mean, you're not going to be able to drive around and make up those 2 entire laps at the speed that they're running right now. So this race is going to be decided on if all of these race cars can keep the nose going in the right direction, with Souza's advantage over Majeski only continuing to increase by a couple of tenths a lap now at 7.5. He'll start lapping top 10 cars, top 5 cars even shortly. Wilkinson not that far ahead with the 7 car of Souza as he lets the 09 Machine Bates go by to go from 3 down to 2 laps down, that car P20.
We see this when we call the eNASCAR iRacing series, that we see a lot of these differing pit strategies. Just saw the 09 car of Dylan Bates unlap himself and move him to 2 laps down instead of 3 laps down. The 67 of Colin Allman moves to the inside to put himself 1 lap down, but as you mentioned, those drivers are working past the leader. The leader is working up on Branden Wilkinson, who is 3 lengths ahead of him, to put him 1 lap down in position number 6. So as much as the running order doesn't really tell it, there's some differing strategies out here that's making this thing pretty intriguing as we work forward towards that lap 200 mark. 56 of Wilkinson right ahead of your leader, about to go 1 lap down, which would leave the top 5 on the lead lap. And oh, by the way, Joe Schaeffer Jr. is not too far ahead of your leader to go a lap down in 5th.
And the funny thing is of course, Souza's going to be faster than Schaeffer Jr. Wilkinson, you got Ian Lane as well, maybe a little bit further up the road. So while he's looking to pass those cars again, not often is your race leader one of the slowest cars on track. I mean, he's getting lapped a lot. I saw a ton of 2 wide in front of him, and I was thinking to myself, well, Souza's got a lot of traffic to get through. Well, those are the cars that have moved through him. So normally as the race leader, you're hoping the lap cars are watching out for you coming up behind him. You have to be extra cautious in what you're willing to give up to the lapped cars catching up on you. And I think Souza has a big benefit to the fact that he's got such a lead over Majeski that he doesn't have to cut it close. He can move up and out of the way and give those cars some extra space that if his advantage was only 1 or 2 seconds, I don't think he'd have the liberty of doing.
Yeah, we see the 7 car one more time getting right up to Schaeffer and putting him a lap down. Ian Lane and Ty Spearman aren't too far ahead of your leader in the number 7. The strategy definitely kind of perplexes me a little bit, but we figured with a short track race you'd see a couple of more cautions, but we did see a lot of green flag racing in the qualifiers. So again, kind of surprises me, kind of doesn't surprise me, as the 19 car of LaPrade about to go what would be a 3rd lap down and scored in position number 20. So the leader, Kyle Souza, continues to pick up the pace, and actually he's picked up the pace compared to Ty Majeski. It was 6 seconds a few laps ago, and now it's over 8 seconds between himself and that 2nd place driver, as he's also in traffic as well. He's got Eddie right ahead of him.
Yeah, the 7th machine here as well. You mentioned Majeski trying to find his way through. I mean, Souza's making moves. He just passed the number 19 car of Brian LaPrade, so we are now down officially to 4 cars on the lead lap. I think if this race stays green, we may end with just 2, and that would be Souza and Majeski, the 2 cars who we talked the most about after that pit stop earlier on in the race. Of course, the other cars on the lead lap, you've got Ty Spearman out here in the number 92 machine. He was another car who came down to the pit lane to take service while he was down there. So did Ian Lane in P4. So those cars who decided to take that call, again, if they got a yellow 20, 30, 40, 50, I mean, even 50 laps him off for the restart there, I mean, they would have been on the backhand, because then drivers would have pitted closer to halfway and they would have been on the old equipment. Instead, it has been green flag racing since then, and they are way out in front to the tune of, 8 seconds between 1st and 2nd, another 6 between Majeski and Spearman, and Ian Lane's only half a second up on Souza right now as the 7 looks to lap him.
And when you look at a guy like Colton Davis, he was one of those drivers that was within the top 3, was charging towards the front of the field prior to that pit stop, and now he finds himself, albeit he is in traffic, he just made a move on the 69 car. He's closing in on the 80 of Herbert's, and Herbert's right now is scored in 11th, 1 lap down. Colton Davis scored on a completely different lap, 2 laps down in 19th place. It just goes to show some of the talent that's in this field on different laps right now, and actually a battle for position number 18 about to brew. Justin Trombley and Colton Davis. About 50 laps ago, this was a battle for position 2, 3 within the top 5, and now it's a battle just inside the top 20 as Davis closes in to try to make 18th.
Now the question is kind of where do we look, because with all the cars that are 2 laps down, which is 14th on the back, and David Morgan has been able to climb himself out of that group, so he actually spearheads this other charge, but is the last car a lap down in 13th. You know, there's cars there that are battling for position. Of course, there's cars that are just a lap down, which right now is P5 through 13 that are fighting, but a lot of smoke that time down at 1. I think somebody might have got turned a bit sideways, but no yellow. Turn 1, a lot of smoke. We stay green. Or do you watch the likes of Susan Majeski try to navigate these other battles? Because if you catch somebody in a group of 2 or 3 that you're trying to get around, obviously you're going to be much less inclined to make it easy on you. So it's kind of tricky. You're going to watch the battles for position, laps down around P10, 11, or you're going to see how your race leaders navigate said battles.
I think right now you got to keep a half eye on Souza, because Souza is coming into some heavy lap traffic right now. Ian Lane directly ahead of him, scored in position number 4, last driver on the lead lap. His teammate Derek Robinson right ahead of him. Will Dravicki is 3 laps down in 22nd. Then they're side by side ahead, and there's where that battle between Colton Davis and Justin Trombley comes into play with the 18 of Donald Clark, and Clark is working through those 2. That's a great little battle there for position number 18, and Donald Clark going to go by like they're standing still and open the door for the 27 to the inside of Colton Davis, trying to pick up that position on Justin Trombley. They've been going at it for the last 5 laps or so, but to answer your question, you definitely have to watch Souza, because he's coming in to some heavier lap traffic in these next few laps, and he's lost a little bit of time on his lead to Ty Majeski. It was about 8.5 seconds a few laps ago. It's just under 8 seconds right now, but you say that we're less than 40 laps to go right now. If Ty Majeski has anything saved, he's got to get up on it, but long way to go in a short time to get there under the green flag. If this race goes caution, we've got a completely different ballgame.
And his teammates can let him go on through, so Souza able to easily find space up atop of Derek Robinson. It is Ian Lane next on deck in front of him. But as you said, inside of the final 40 laps of this 5th annual H&H Sign Supply Inc. Fall Brawl Spectacular with the Sim Auto Racing Association and Five Flags Speedway here on RaceSpotTV. Evan Pasoko, Tim Terry up with you, along with Hugo Louise. Only one caution flag thus far tonight came just shy of lap number 90. The reason you're seeing the likes of Susan Majeski so far out in front of everybody else, with only 4 cars on the lead lap, is because they decided to pit at that time, while other cars did not. They ran out of fuel at about lap 170, had to come down to get fuel to the end. A lot of them taking their tires since then, and they are hoping that we do get that yellow. For the cars on the lead lap, I'm sure they want us to quit talking about it. Don't jinx it. Souza losing some time to Majeski, but being careful around the traffic in front of him.
And one of those cars that just went by was Ryan Matthews. There was a driver that was in the top 5 earlier in this race. He unlapped one of his 2 laps to put himself on the tail end of 1 lap down, sitting in position number 14. I guess if there's anything good out of it, Evan, he's gained 1 position since we started this race as the 7 car slows and Kyle Souza is coming to pit road. Did he not pack that thing full of fuel? The 7 onto pit road. That is huge, as Ty Majeski will inherit the lead in the 91. They continue to work around here, the 91 of Ty Majeski. Down the back straightaway, he's got Daniel Pope the second to the outside as he digs down into corner number 4 and will continue the lead. And now it's about 7.5 seconds back to Ty Spearman in position number 2. It's open back to 8 drivers, Evan, on the lead lap.
So that really comes out of left field with Souza having to come down pit road. He had taken the 2 right side tires on that initial trip, and we thought everybody was good. Did he possibly not get it packed all the way with fuel? Because based on the numbers that we saw drivers be able to push it, you should have been able to go. What was, you take the 90 laps out of that, you know, the 160 laps to the end of the race, that should have been in the fuel number. Instead, he's forced down pit road, takes the left side that he had available, and it was Majeski who went with the fuel only. Hasn't even gotten tires on that number 91 machine tonight. Assumes the race lead now inside of the final 30. And you have to wonder now, for whatever reason, if Souza couldn't make it, is Majeski maybe in the same boat?
I think they would have packed it full of fuel, at least at that time that they came down onto pit road. They can make it on fuel, but that's given you pack that thing completely full of gasoline to bring it back out onto the racetrack under caution. So as long as they packed it full time, Majeski is looking like a rock star right now, as he's got the 09 to the inside of Dylan Bates. That'll put Bates back one lap down, at the tail end of one lap down, sitting in position number 16, if he can make that pass, and indeed he does. Spearman about 7.5 seconds back, and then back to Ian Lane, who's about 2 seconds in behind Spearman, so that might be a little bit of a battle. The closest battle, though, within the top 5 is Branden Wilkinson and Joe Schaeffer Jr. Schaeffer has about a car length or so to reel in the 56. They got Briar LaPrade in that little mix as well as they come off of corner number 2. Wilkinson continues to hold that position, and it's moved Colin Allman back onto the lead lap as well as Ty Majeski's onto pit road.
The 91 car had to come down as well. He can't make it either, and I don't think he's completely out of fuel, Tim. He's trying to get that car into the pit stall by shaking it side to side. Majeski ran it out of fuel as he gets into the box, and now it is Ty Spearman in the 92 to the race lead. And for all of this, we saw drivers, Tim, longest we saw, keeping in mind that there was a yellow in there, but we did see somebody do 180 laps on fuel. When you figure the fact that the first yellow of this race was at about lap number 90, you only have to have about 160 in the tank to get the end. Did they just not fill it up all the way?
It's unbelievable right now. I would. That's the only solution. That's the only thing I can think of, is they didn't pack it full of fuel. But we saw Trombley go 180, but that was really pushing it at the end of the day. 160 should be able to make it, but maybe they were concerned under caution about falling a lap down. I don't know what the process would be with those drivers. But now Ty Spearman looking pretty good right now, but 2 seconds ahead of Ian Lane. And look at Colin Allman. He's 3.5 seconds back. There's the driver that sat on the pole in this one. And right now, he is 3.5 seconds back, and he's going to have to pedal in the final 20 laps to get that thing back to the front. He gained 0.3 of a second that last time by on Spearman. Keep an eye on the 67. He might have this here.
And Colin Allman, we weren't even talking about the 67. In fact, last time we chatted about him, it was because he had just gotten himself back to being just a lap down, and he was the last car a lap down at the time. Ian Lane, we were talking about it like it was an inevitability that he was going to get lapped, and he's got to come to pit road also. So the 43 is in. Spearman now just the lone driver who is still out on track, and even if he could make it, Colin Allman faster that time by 0.3 of a second.
Question comes down to how wide do you make it if you're Ty Spearman. He's losing ground to some of these drivers. There's the 69 car taking a peek to the inside. Derek Robinson, we saw him go a couple laps down early. He's trying to get one of his 4 laps back to the inside. He goes on Spearman. Colin Allman has this thing. He's got the speed. He's got to get by Spearman and hope this thing stays green. Who knows, maybe a green-white checker would spice this thing up at the end. But right now, there are 11 cars that are scored on the lead lap. A little bit of lap traffic for your leaders as Mark Royer will go to the outside. The 92 of Spearman dives down to the inside, and Colin Allman closing in on that number 92.
And what a turnaround it would be for Allman, who looked like he had ended up on the back foot of the strategy. He was, and probably if you look at this race in totality, is the best car this evening. It was all him in that opening run, opted not to come down to the pit lane, and then off of the restart after being a dominant car by a healthy margin, got swallowed up by the pack, started to fall back, and we thought that his night would have been done. Decided to make a pit stop at 171. He went for all 4 tires at once. When he made that stop, we know that he's good on the fuel to the end, whereas Spearman, maybe the question marks still linger, and the better car, faster car closing in, only about 7 or 8 car lengths back now.
It's 2 to 3/10 a lap that he's closing in, and he may have closed in a little bit more right there. Colin Allman still turning 16.6s to Spearman 16.9s, and another 16.63 that time for Allman. Spearman ahead of him was a 17.0, and now we have a battle on our hands. Throw those stopwatches out the window. Mono on mono up in front. Your pole sitter, Colin Allman, takes a look to the inside, trying to make the move on the 92 with Spearman. Spearman pulls high, side by side, and Colin Allman trying to make this thing look good with 10 laps to go.
Spearman's going to try to fight back on the outside, but it is going to be a futile exchange. And Colin Allman, who dominated early after starting on pole, will find himself back in the race lead with 10 laps to go in this 2019 Fall Brawl Spectacular. And what a night it's been. Wilkinson, Schaeffer, Pataska, those names now top 5 once more and all back in the conversation. But Allman now counting this one down to the end as he tries to work through some traffic.
And that's just it. You got to get by Colton Davis here in the 27. Put yourself with a little bit of insurance in between yourself and that second place driver is Spearman. But Colton Davis doesn't want to fall another lap down right now. He's currently scored his 1 lap down in 17th place. Allman goes to the outside, and he's making it a little bit difficult as Colton Davis, but they're continuing to pull away from Ty Spearman. And you look at that number 67 of Allman. He's got to hope this thing stays green to the end. Another 6 laps. Hit your marks and go to victory lane as he now moves to the outside of Colton Davis. What a story for Allman as he'll come by this time and have 6 laps remaining.
27's not going to make this easy on him, though, really forcing the 67 to squeeze by on the outside line. Allman going all the way down to the bottom, trying to make it as difficult as he could. But Colin Allman does clear, and he has got a good bit of clean racetrack in front of him now. Looking for 5 laps to go this time through. Again, what he really needs to do is that final trip around, get the white flag, and make this one official. He's only got Matthew Eddy in front of him. Other than that, it's just those 2 cars amongst half of the racetrack. Keep it smart, keep it clean, as Spearman's now a full second behind in P2.
Devin Morgan's going to run at a time to catch the leader, but he is going to get a podium finish out of this one if he continues the speed that he has in these final 4 laps. He just made a move on Joe Schaeffer Jr. to move into 4th. He's got the Briar LaPrade machine between himself and 3rd place Branden Wilkinson. Devin Morgan is on the hunt. He's got speed closing in on the final couple laps of this one. He's going to fall short of a victory, but he may be able to take a top 3 finish out of this Fall Brawl, moving to the inside of the 19 and closing in on the 56 to battle amongst themselves as Colin Allman trying to wrap this thing up. He's a lap and a half away from one of the biggest wins in short track racing here on iRacing. He'll come to the white here.
Bro, we talked early on as he sees the white flag, 1 to go at Five Flags, about how those cars that actually started outside of the top 10 by racing their way in, they looked better on a race pace. Colin Allman is going to prove us wrong. The best car tonight. He'll become the 5th different winner in 5 years. Final time at a 4 for Colin Allman, who wins the 2019 Fall Brawl Spectacular.
Spearman comes home in 2nd, and Devin Morgan, what a spirited run at the end. Had about the same speed, I believe, as Colin Allman did, but didn't have the track position with that stop under green, and he'll finish in 3rd in front of Wilkinson and Schaeffer. But what a story to this one. All of these short track races have a story, and this one here with only 1 caution, green flag pit stops for your leaders. Ty Spearman was able to pack that thing full of fuel. Ty Majeski wasn't, and you see the 67 pull into victory lane. Colin Allman starts on the pole and comes home with the win, but a lot of racing in between, a lot of strategy played out in this one as he lights it up here at Five Flags.
And it is a well-deserved celebration as he'll take home the better part of the over $500 that were on the line in this one. Colin Allman, your winner from Five Flags. Let's look top to bottom at tonight's RaceSpotTV full race results. It is Ullman from pole to checker, but man, does that not tell the tale of the tape? What a race for the 6070 car, who ends up being on the right call when it's all said and done. Wins it by 2 seconds over Ty Spearman, who was able to make that fuel last as long as it needed to. Devin Morgan, maybe a counter if there would have been a late yellow. Same speed, but P3 by the end of this one. Wilkinson 4th, Joe Schaeffer Jr. P5. We'll try to talk with some of those top finishers in just a moment. Dallas Pataska comes home 6th in this one. At a tip of the cap to Kyle Seuss. It looked like it was his nut. He ends up in 7th position when it's all said and done. Ryan Matthews comes home at 8th. Jacob Harberts is 9th, and the last car on the lead lap is P10. That's Chris Canfield.
First car 1 lap down as Matthew Eddy scored in 11th. Daniel Pope the second in position number 12 with Ty Majeski. Oh, what might have been finishes in 13th place. Dylan Bates in 14th and Donald Clark in 15th. Had some speed after his pit stop, but will come home 1 lap down in the 15th place position. Ian Lane was one of those drivers that stayed out at the end but had to come down onto pit road. Last driver on the lead lap, or the 1 lap down field, scored in 16th place. Colton Davis 2 laps back. Justin Trombley, strong run early, comes home in 18th place. Briar LaPrade comes home in 19th, 2 laps down, and Will Dravicki comes home in 20th, 2 laps down.
And then continuing on through in this one, you've got Derek Robinson, 21st. He's the first of the cars that finished 3 laps down. James Milbachler there with him as well. And Mark Royer down 5 in 23rd. Rest of the cars pretty much not making it the distance. It includes Alex McCollum in 24th, and Nicole Cabrade, P25. Jimmy Mullis, 26th. Sean Cool, 27th, with Ryan Blanchard, 28th position. Kyle Eli, 29th. Keith Medeiros, 30th. And all the way at the back, it is Fred Burrow in 31st. That's a look top to bottom at your RaceSpotTV full race results. We'll take a quick opportunity to step aside, and we come back to Five Flags Speedway. We'll talk with your top finishers. It's Call It Allman's night on the 5th annual Fall Brawl Spectacular. We'll go to Victory Lane next. You're watching RaceSpotTV. And back live for the virtual Five Flags Speedway, where RaceSpotTV's coverage of the 5th annual H&H Sign Supply Inc. Fall Brawl Spectacular wraps up from Pensacola, where Colin Allman is your winner of the annual SARA Fall Brawl. We'll go trackside, chat with him in just a moment. First, we'll welcome you back into RaceSpotTV's coverage. Evan Pasoku, Tim Terry, along with our producer downstairs, Hugo DeWeese with you. And Tim, man, the final 40 laps of this race looked a lot different that when it got down to the white flag, we thought that this one was going to end pretty tame. Instead, a couple of cars short on a field, and Allman comes back.
The only caution flag falling prior to lap 100 in this one, 150 laps to the end. Green pit strategy coming into play. Green flag pit stops for the field, and at the end of the day, Colin Allman goes to victory lane. And as you mentioned, he started on the pole. He won the race, but there was so much that happened in between. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what happened. He comes out with the win. He comes out with the extra money and the victory in the Fall Brawl. Spectacular.
Let's go trackside and chat with him now. Colin Allman, the 5th different Fall Brawl winner in 5 years of competition with the Sim Auto Racing Association. We're down with the driver of the 67 machine now. Colin, congratulations on the win. At the top of the night, I feel like this is the result that you would have expected. Starting on pole, leading a lot of laps, but honestly, we were down it there for a little bit of yellow at the beginning of this one. You decide to stay out. It then goes green the distance, but somehow still good enough. Just talk us through it.
Yeah, man, we had a French Mafia guys. We worked really hard on this set this week, and we had a great car. For the first 120 laps, we were really good. Just kept getting freer and freer as we went along, and that's when Devin and Ryan got by me, and then eventually Jimmy. But yeah, before then, I mean, the thing was a rocket ship, man. We were flying, and then I think I wore out the right rear just a little bit on my driving style. But yeah, when I couldn't believe the whole thing went green like that. I was hoping for a caution around 80 to go or so, because I knew my car was better on the short run than everybody else's. So I was hoping I could get out, get a caution, get out of pit road, hopefully second or third. And be able to get back in front of everybody. But luckily it worked out. We went down pit road under that green flag run. I literally filled it up to the maximum that I needed. I finished the race with half a gallon. That's how I got ahead of Devin and some of them guys off of pit road, I think, because I took just enough, and it worked out for us.
And I think just enough or just not enough is as well why this 67 ends up in victory lane, because it turns out we thought that this was going to be done with Kyle and Ty running out in front. They have to come down to pit road in the final 40, but Ty Spearman comes home in second, showing that, well, the same group of cars that pitted on that first exchange and only exchange of yellow flag pit stops could have indeed gotten enough fuel to go the distance. Just two of them weren't able to. Were you aware at all that there was a chance that those guys would be dripping down to the pit lane, or as you mentioned, hoping on the yellow? Did you think that that would have been your only hope?
After the green flag stops went through, ended up being 2 laps down, so I was just hoping it went green at least until I got my lap back, or got back on the lead lap. You know, I was really hoping that it would just stay green until I got my lap back, and once I got my lap back, it was hammered down. I was just trying to pick everybody off one by one. I think ended up 7th after Kyle went to pit road. So, yeah, luckily, I don't think I would have been able to catch Majeski if he wouldn't have had to pit. But luckily 250 lap tires versus 80 or 90 worked out.
And the best thing about this Fall Brawl is that, of course, you talk about the who's who of short track racing on iRacing here participating in this event. You become the 5th different winner in all 5 years, joining the likes of Ryan Doucette, Trevor Edwards, Tim Bills, and Ryan Borges. What does it mean for you to get a win in this event?
Oh, it's awesome, man. I think I've been running this race since the very first one. I think I missed the second one or third one, but it's really, really good to get this win finally, and especially for my Front Stretch Mafia guys. This is 2 big wins that we've had at Five Flags in the past 2 years, so it's pretty cool to see us be able to compete on a high level with some of the best in the game.
You got a lot of that 67 machine out in front on the cameras tonight, Colin. We'll let you jet out of here, get to celebrating as another night at Five Flags. It ends well for you. Before we do those sponsors, shout-outs to those good folks. Who do you want to say hi to when we've got you?
I got to thank the guys at Front Stretch Mafia again, man. Like I said, we worked really hard on this set. We probably started 3 or 4 weeks ago on this setup, and unfortunately some of the guys had some bad luck and got caught in the tire strategy, pit strategy game. But I mean, unfortunately, that's part of racing. That's what got us last year as well. But got to thank my mom and dad. They're both watching, and yeah, that's about it, man.
I'll tell you what, we appreciate you giving us a little bit of time post-race to chat with us and walk us through that one again. Colin, congratulations on the win, and best of luck with what's next for the 67 car.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you for broadcasting.
Race winner tonight for the virtual Five Flags Speedway and the 5th annual H&H Science Supply Inc. Fall Brawl Spectacular. It is Colin Allman's night this evening. Flip side of that strategy, Tim, the complete opposite strategy for Ty Spearman, who comes home in second spot. Your track side with the 92.
And here's another guy that's been trying to win this for 5 years and comes up one spot short here in 2019. But Ty, let's talk about the pit strategy that played out here. It was looking really good towards the end of this race, but fell just a little bit short. Talk about what was going through your mind on the pit strategy.
Yeah, so we knew that, we were going to have to take fuel approximately twice, I guess you could say, because, the fuel, getting fuel in the car takes time. So we decided that, if around lap 70 or anywhere between 60 and 70, there's a caution that comes out, we need to go on in and basically, for all intent purposes, top it off. I don't think Ty topped off his car as much as I did mine. So I took a little bit of extra gas just on the outside chance that it, went green the whole way. And, it worked out for me. I hate it for Ty. He had a really, really good car. But we were actually counting on a caution with 60 to go. That's typically, when a caution will come out in the Fall Brawl. So we were just counting on it. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So, I don't know. I went 250 laps on the same set of tires and finished second. I don't feel too bad.
Racked up a ton of money in year number one, picked up some preliminary wins, but it seems like this super late model race and this Fall Brawl has been your Achilles heel. What do you have to do to win one of these things?
Man, I don't know. The first Fall Brawl, I led, I don't know, I think I led over half the laps in that race and had an awesome car. And unfortunately, we took a pit stop there and I was like, I'm sitting pretty. And one of my teammates hit the outside wall and got into me on the front stretch and just ruined my day. I think I finished 5th still, but I don't even know how the car was running. And the past couple of Fall Brawls, just things haven't fell my way. So maybe next year. There's always next year. We'll be around.
Now we're going to see you running any more of the SARA series here throughout and maybe try to get some more laps and maybe try to scare these guys into that 6th Fall Brawl and try to take away the win there?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's so much of a challenge week in and week out with these folks that race SARA. A lot of time is spent on these setups. Obviously, not as much time as people spend on the A car, but we spend a lot of time. A lot of other folks spend a lot of time on setups, and it's amazing to look at maybe the top 15 in each race and how close the lap times are. So it's just a little. I guess a little of the twist of the setup here or there that's making the difference on the folks that are winning. Honestly, I've had a horrible time with the new build, getting accustomed to it and making changes and really getting the setup to drive where it suits my driving style. So it's been a challenge, but I feel like we made a lot of gains this week. Ty Majeski worked his butt off on this setup, and really so did everyone else on the posse. Branden and Joe and Mark, and just everyone's had a hand in this thing. And I really think that we had an excellent long-run car, and I really think we had a good strategy, just didn't play out.
You mentioned the posse. You got a beautiful-looking 92 race car. Who else is on the side of this? Who makes it happen to get you to a second-place finish tonight?
Well, as always, the posse. Definitely my wife, because she's been toting the kids around this week to here and there to get them to where they need to go without my help, because I've been trying to help with the setup and 4S Sign and Supply in Gaffney, South Carolina. My dad, he's always been a supporter of me and what I do in this little game. So definitely shout out to everybody here again. Most important, the posse, just awesome bunch of guys, and really the whole SARA, the SARA League and the folks that race in it are outstanding every week, and even though we may go at each other's throat, it is so much fun to race with these guys.
and put on one heck of a show here this evening. Ty Spearman falling one position short in the Fall Brawl, coming home in position number 2. And Evan, you caught up with Devin Morgan, a guy that flew at the end of this race up to position number 3, had a quick race car, fell a little bit short.
Yeah, let's get trackside and see what the driver of the 112 machine has to say as Morgan comes home in 3rd tonight from Five Flags Speedway. And, well, we talked about the 2 varying strategies. The 112 there, Devin, was technically on the race when it won. The option to not pit on the yellow early, to pit at around that lap number 160 or 170 marker. The car had speed, just maybe not enough laps to close this one out.
Yeah, I think we definitely had one of the better cars there. Just strategy deal. It's not my strong suit there. I'm just more of a no tire guy, hammer down, go to the front, and the strategy really messed me up there.
It's kind of funny because, of course, Almada goes on to win this race, and you guys had duked it out, for a good bit. Some of the top cars before the race was kind of muddied up a little bit by the strategy there, but then also Ty Spearman splits you two apart with the opposite decision. So it seemed like that as this one comes down to the end, the opportunities were there for anybody to make either of the strategies work. Obviously, that car was real hot out of the gate. You and some of the other cars that started around you on the grid in this one, Jimmy and Alex, were real hot early on. What do you feel like maybe the difference was on that very long run to getting separated from the 67?
We were just a lot better up off the corner. I could just keep the car straight and gain the throttle, and I had a lot of forward drive right there, and I think a lot of them guys were kind of just flying around and whatnot. So that really helped. I think I could have been a tick better there if I was starting farther forward, but this is the way the qualifying went. I didn't get lucky with a random draw and had to go really early, and that put me back on the starting grid.
Of course, you did have to, therefore, spend some of the opening laps at this race to try to claw your way through. Still, you look at, the names that are in this competition tonight for such a prestigious event, one of the bigger short track events on the iRacing calendar every year, to be able to reconcile maybe a potential race-winning car with not go to victory lane, but also still get it a P3. How are you left feeling after this one?
I'm definitely feeling pretty pumped up. A lot better showing than my first Fall Brawl last year. I started 26, had one of the faster cars, and made a mistake and ended up P30. So it was really nice to have some redemption after last year. And LeDuc Matthews and Ryan Matthews, all of them guys got me a good car, and we just missed it a little bit.
We look forward to seeing if another attempt will come. Just talking with Ty Spearman, who came home second, talking about the many attempts he has done to try to grab one of the checkered flags in this Fall Brawl, and certainly a great finish for you to build on tonight, Devin. We'll let you jet out of here. I know, long night of hard racing. Anybody want to say hi to before we let you go?
Yeah, I gotta thank my mom, my dad, Splash and Go Graphics, Dreamer Racing Series. I gotta thank Matt Rolfe and all the other guys at Auto Racing Association for putting on such a great place for everyone to come out and race. Super good competition, super hard, clean racing.
Well, happy to have you a part of this one, Devin. Appreciate the time. Again, congratulations on the P3 finish tonight, and we'll catch you next time out.
Thank you. I'll see you around.
Big thanks right there as well, not only to Devin Morgan, who comes home third, but as well Ty Spearman and tonight's race winner, Colton Davis, for giving us some time to chat post-race in this one. And again, Tim, events like this never fail to surprise me. And like I said there when we came back for the break there, 40 laps to go. This race looked like it was pretty much decided. You heard it right from the horse's mouth, talking to Ty Spearman there in second position. Got a little bit more fuel in it, and that was the difference between still having a shot at it. I mean, Allman didn't have a ton of time to spare. He made that pass for the race win with 10 laps to go. So Ty's still able to get the P2, but that little bit of extra fuel is the difference between finishing up there or off of the lead lap entirely.
Yeah, when we had Kyle Souza and Ty Majeski up in front, we figured that this race, if it did go green, which it did, it was their race to lose. And as we talked to Ty Spearman, they didn't get the tank full. Ty did, and was able to come home in position number 2, and all 250 laps run on the same set of tires, which is impressive as it is, and to come home with a top 3 finish. But congratulations to Colin Allman. Started up front, finished up front, and comes home with the Fall Brawl spectacular win presented by H&H Sign Supply Incorporated. And some drivers didn't come home with the finish that they wanted to, and a lot of big names mid-pack when it comes to the results of this one. So congratulations to Colin, hats off to SARA and putting on a fantastic race. I'm a short track guy. I love these super late models. One of the most fun cars to drive on this service. If you're watching us on RaceSpot and you haven't got into the super late model recently, go over and see the SARA guys. Maybe get signed up for one of their short track leagues. And it's a ton of fun to drive these race cars on iRacing. And these guys put on one heck of a show. Congratulations to the whole league and everybody associated with the Fall Brawl. And Colin Allman's got some money to spend now.
Yeah, if you want to get involved, I encourage you to go over to racesara.com. That's RACESARA.com. You can find out more information. And if you don't want to, you don't have to wait till next fall till we do it again for a sixth time. Certainly get involved in the short track scene on the iRacing service. But it was Borges in 2015, Bills in 16, Edwards in 17, Doucette last year, and tonight it is Colin Allman winning the 5th annual H&H Sign Supply Inc. Fall Brawl Spectacular. That'll do it for us here tonight for the virtual Five Flags Speedway. On behalf of our entire team at RaceSpotTV and iRacing Live, and of course for your broadcast crew tonight, for myself, Evan Pasoko, for Tim Terry and Hugo Louise, want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Colin Allman, the Fall Brawl winner in 2019. Good night. We'll catch you next time on RaceSpotTV.